Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching KTN Prime, and we're moving on into tonight's discussion about the government proposing to sell 15% Safaricom shares to South Africa-based Vodafone. And this decision has sparked mixed reactions, with the opposition threatening to challenge the decision in court. The opposition also argues that the sale did not go through public participation from Kenyans. And we have with me in studio Professor Exen Iraqi to my far right. He is a political economist, and also we have, or rather he's an economist, and also we have Bilo Kero, who is a political economist. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time tonight.
Thank you.
I'm happy to have you with us. Quite an interesting discussion we are set to have tonight, sparking mixed reactions. Of course, we've had the opposition talking into the issue, saying that the government did not consult any public participation into the matter. But I just want us to first understand, what are the numbers, Professor Exen Iraqi? We've had the former Deputy President, Gachagua, talking about one share is selling at 34 shillings, whereas the real value is 70 to 80 Kenya shillings. Professor Exen Iraqi, is that really the case?
Thank you for inviting us to the studio to discuss a very important national issue. It's interesting how Safaricom shares are always, there is always controversy around Safaricom shares. When Safaricom was first floated, if you remember, the share was going for 5 shillings. And one prominent Kenyan, who I'm not going to name, said it was worth 100 shillings. But the market showed the real price. So I don't know where people are getting 72, because the market is efficient enough to give us the price. So to tell us that it's supposed to be worth twice, I think is an overestimation. So it might be maybe 40, but not 70-something, in my opinion.
So if it's not 70, because we did hear the former Deputy President talking about a value of 34 shillings per share, the real value he claims is 70 to 80 Kenya shillings, and meaning, according to his words, the country is set to lose about 250 billion Kenya shillings. I do not know what you feel about this, Bilo.
Now, let me first, I think there's politics and there are facts that we have to talk about. Much of what you hear the Deputy President say, or any of these other people in opposition, is politics. The fact is, Safaricom is listed on Nairobi Stock Exchange, and it's the most highly valued company, not just in Kenya, but in the whole of Eastern Central Africa. And as of today, if you check out the market price of 28 in the last couple of days, its market capitalization, its total market value is 1.13 trillion shillings. It has crossed the 1 trillion mark in June this year. It's the highest it has ever come to. That's the market value. Now, there's a difference. You know, the market value means the total equity value. That means that if I was a shareholder today, and there are, by the way, over, last time I remember, over 800,000 shareholders in Safaricom, because I did the IPO. I was one of the I was the share registrar for Safaricom for many years before I went into this other business. So the market price today, if you want to sell your share now, if you are holding a share in Safaricom, you will only sell it on Nairobi Stock Exchange, and the price is 28. And here the government is telling you, we are getting it at 34, a premium of 23%. Why are they getting this premium of 23%? Instead of being paid at 28, why is Vodacom paying 34? And the government says the reason is because it's being sold come dividend. In other words, they are actually getting a much better deal, much better, in my view, than you would have got if me and you were buying those shares from the market. The fact that the market is 28 and I'm getting it at 34, I'm getting at a better deal. But that is one aspect. The second aspect is, you see, although the prices are always determined by the market, if you are an investor and if you are a seller, there are two different perspectives you look at. If you are an investor, a stock price alone does not always determine the value of a company. There are other factors. People look at the growth of that, you know, that business. They look at the potential for earnings, you know, what revenue of earnings that it has, and so many other factors. But as a seller, I'm looking at a number of factors. If I am a shareholder today, I have got kids going to university, I want some liquidity, I have to sell those shares and get some money. But for government, they look at a number of things. One, the government could have other priorities. The government is looking at opportunity cost. The money that I'm having in this, could I have done it with something else, like the infrastructure bond and things that they're planning? They're looking at also in future, this is a business. There's the management governance issue. All our state corporations, the underlying issues of governance. But in the case of Safaricom, you could be looking at, this is a business where, for example, if Starlink, you remember the argument on Starlink last year, when a lot of Kenyans said we support Starlink, they should come. And Safaricom said no. If we just allow Starlink without regulation, it will lead to the collapse of its business. So tomorrow a competition will come in, Safaricom can lose business. Its technology could become, obsolete. There are external shocks, there are policy changes. A lot of things can impact on the price. So for the government, they look at all those things and say, look, I want to sell 15% today, and I've got a good deal, and I want to put that money into something better. So I think when we simply say, as the Deputy President says, the value is 70, where is he getting 70 shillings from? I mean, that's not the market value of anything quoted or listed on stock exchange anywhere in the world. Is that market price? There's nothing else.
Well, the opposition says it will move to court because it does not support the move to sell the shares to Vodacom. And of course, here highlighting the issue of public participation. And this has not been a special case, because this has been mentioned before, that government assets are privatized or sold without the public participation. Sure. I do not know what you feel about this, ex and Iraqi, where assets that belong to the government essentially belong to the state, and thus to Kenyans. Shouldn't we also see a case where Kenyans are involved in some of these major decisions, XN?
I'll make it even more interesting, because I'm not talking here just as an analyst, but I'm also a shareholder of Safaricom. So I would be very glad to be consulted when the company is being sold, because I'm a stakeholder. But I think from where I start, I don't think we have gone the whole process. It is a process. I don't think the shares have been sold. So what I suspect is that in the fullness of time, there will be public participation, the parliament will be involved, the cabinet will be involved, because I don't think it is as straightforward as the media is saying that the shares have been sold. And I think he has been in parliament longer than me, or he has been in parliament, so he knows the process. But I think the whole thing is being politicized. And that is expected, because 2027 is not very far. But let's talk economics and leave politics alone. A burden at hand is what is ever in the bush. So maybe the government is arguing that if we can get this money now, we don't know about tomorrow. Maybe Skylink and others, is it called Starlink and others will come, and the value of Safaricom could go down, and we may not get the value that we expect to get tomorrow. But there are also some few questions we need to ask. One is, why are we sending this to Vodacom or Vodafone? Because if I was asked as an economist, I would argue that the government should auction these shares to the highest bidder and set a reserve price. That way, as a shareholder, as Kenyan, would get the best value for our money. But I think there's also the question of when to sell. Should we sell today or should we sell tomorrow? So what we need to do to prickle this bubble is probably get all the information from Safaricom, from the buyers, from the shareholders, from the government, so that we know exactly what is happening. For now, there's a lot of political disinformation. But I think it's also good because it serves as a case study for future privatization, because everybody is talking about future privatization. Although we may also ask as Kenyans, if I was selling a cow, that I have 10 cows, should I sell the thinnest or the fattest? So this is the question people are asking, because the selling of Safaricom as one of the most profitable companies should probably come after we have sold the thinnest companies, the ones that are making losses. So it's not just a question of Safaricom shares being sold. It's a bigger political issue. It's a bigger economic issue. And the whole debate should be about privatization. And that's what we should spend more time discussing.
All right, but before, go ahead, Bilo.
Yeah, I agree with him on the issue of the process. It has not even started. The government has simply indicated that this is what they want to do. They have had discussions. This is the major shareholder. They own 49% now. And so the government wants to offload another 15% to the same, because it's easier for them to get this kind of deal from this Vodacom than if they went direct to the market and sold and open up to Professor and his team, they will probably, if it is at 25, they'll probably not want to spend more than another 5 shillings or even. So I think for them, they found this is a company that is willing to do that. But more importantly, I think what he said is correct, that the public participation in many of these issues being raised, if you look at the Act, it's not yet. Parliament announced this morning, it is in the newspapers, that they will start public hearings on the matter, so the public participation process will continue. That will definitely be done. Then it will go down to Cabinet. Then it will have to get approval from the Capital Markets Authority. So it's quite a process. But in terms of value for money, from where I sit, this is a good deal. Why? Because you are getting a very good premium, 23% higher than what is in the market. Never mind that some people have argued that the government is going to forego dividends of 57 billion because it's all come dividend. Instead of getting that 57 billion at future dividend, they are getting 40. This is the argument that has been raised by some people. But you see, Prof will here tell you that money that I'm going to get in the next 6-7 years, if I get it today, there is a question of discounting. And the net present value you get today and what you will get in many years to come is not the same because of the discounting of the
So are we saying the value is more favorable at this point?
Yes.
If we were to say that the proposal sails through?
For me, this is a great deal for 2 reasons. One, the price. And 2, what they want to do with it. If they were going to spend it in the budget and then it's used for paying salaries and those things, consumption, yes, I would oppose it. It's not worth it. But if they are setting up an infrastructure fund and they're using this as a seed money, that 240 billion they're going to get will enable them. They will leverage it in the market and be able to get $1 trillion, loan based on the fund that they get. So I think the government's objective of really, because they're setting up these funds, this becoming a seed money, for me, I think this is also very strategic. Lastly, I want to say that they did announce, the CS, that there are a number of conditions that have been put in place that Vodafone has agreed to, which will protect the interest of Kenyans, including the members of the board, the chairman of the board, and so many other things that they have decided must be done in order to protect the interest of the nation, so that the company essentially, although they own majority of the shares as investors or foreign investors, but the control of the company in terms of many of the management and leadership will still be in Kenya. I think that also is a very positive
I think that this debate is becoming interesting because we're also injecting some emotions. Remember that Safaricom is seen as one of Kenya's economic firstborns, the biggest company, very widely owned by Kenyans, rich, old, young, and so on. So when people hear through the media that Safaricom will be controlled by not Kenyans, but somebody else, there is a lot of emotions. Because according to the media reports, Vodacom will be controlling about 55%. That's majority. And the government was right in trying to control. But the question is how long that will last, because if Vodafone gets 55%, I'm sure they have a lot of control, a lot of say on the board and policies and so on. So that's what's making Kenyans very emotional about it. And the purpose of the money, I agree with my colleague, is very good. But you see, that is futuristic. And the moment the government gets money, we know it is supposed to go to infrastructure and so forth, but it could go elsewhere. That's why I'm saying let's get all the information from the buyers and sellers and the regulators so that we have informed position.
That brings me to this particular comment. Just to make it clear, we do know that the government proposal to sell this 15% shares is more or less to get a seed capital to operationalize the National Infrastructure Fund and the National Sovereign Wealth Fund. But the question from the opposition has been, like Prof is saying, will this money really go into this particular seed, or will it go to a few individuals who will benefit perhaps from this? You see,
this is why sale. I said earlier, there's a lot of politics. We have to really, politics, you can't do anything about it. I can go there if I'm in opposition and say anything I want to say, like the one that the Deputy President was saying. But the reality is, we have institutions. This is money that Vodacom is going to transfer to a consolidated fund, which will then be voted in Parliament to transfer that amount to an infrastructure fund or to a sovereign wealth fund. Both of them, the laws, I think, have been done. So it's not something that somebody can say, you know. I've seen some people argue that there are people making money on the side and there are people, you know, the question around transparency and accountability on privatization has always been there. These are things that suspicions are always there, that when you are in government, you cannot be doing those kind of deals without, these suspicions will be there. But I think we have to look at the larger picture, really. I mean, this government, and I want to take us back a bit, Prof. There was a task force which was set up by Uhuru in 2013, led by Isaac Owondo and Abdikader. You remember?
Yes.
On how to, a president task force on these parastatal reforms. They came up with a wonderful report, which 10 years Uhuru sat on. He never did a single thing. Ruto came last year when the finance bill was rejected in 2024. They went in and they said, okay, we are going to use this now to do all the things that have been recommended, including, you know, 30 of them, you know, all the things that have been said. 20-something of them will be, 42 of them will be merged. Some of them will be dissolved. Some of them will be sold, because we have 267 state corporations. They were spending, last year in 2024, 487 billion was allocated to state corporations just to run them. So the argument has always been there for the last 30 more years, that let us try and sell some of these things or merge them, because we are wasting a lot of money. In fact, the Institute of Economic Affairs did a study last year, and they said that 487 billion, which we spent last year on state corporations, was enough to pay for the free primary education for 16 years. So, I mean, so these are institutions which, when Uhuru in 2021 did a survey, they did a research, you know, IMF insisted, and they did a research on the top 18 state corporations. Out of the 18, only 4 were profitable. Kenya Post Authority, Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Airways, and Kengen. Safaricom was not in the survey. The rest of them, you know, all of them were unprofitable. At that time, Kenya Power Lighting was not, Kenya Railways, all of these others. We were spending on those 18, 17 billion annually. That's what the government said in that circular that they issued. So the thing is, the larger picture is there's questions of governance, there's corruption, there's mismanagement in state corporations. Government has no business running business. This is the essence. If you go to US today, there's no telephone company owned by US government. There's no telephone company owned by British government. I mean, there's nothing strategic about telephones. That's why in many of these countries, there are many telephone companies competing. You know, so I think this story that, you know, we should not sell, this is there is some sentimental attachment to it, and no, look, this is the same arguments we have used to say that KPC should not be sold. Kenya Pipeline, Prof. Kenya Pipeline Company, Uganda doesn't have a Kenya Pipeline Company. Tanzania doesn't have. Many countries don't have, and they still get their oil. But all those tanks in Mombasa are not all of them owned by Kenya Pipeline. There are private companies also who have storage tanks. You go to Dar es Salaam, there are private companies who government does not have to really do, and there's nothing strategic. This is the argument many of us have given, that, look, the more you involve the government, the more corruption. So that a company like KPC, which makes billions every month, perhaps, how much are they giving the government? Maximum they have given, last year the profit they earned was 7 billion. The other year they earned 6 billion, 2023-24. They're not making the money. So some of these things, I think, if the government says, instead of waiting for 20 years for me to earn 100 billion, I would sell 65% of KPC, collect my 100 billion, put it in infrastructure. So efficiency, even Safaricom, when it was being launched in 2008, the same discussions were there. Why is the government selling our telephone company? But today, everybody sees the benefits of having that sale.
The question is, what does this mean for Safaricom? The services that Kenyans have enjoyed from Safaricom, do you think much will be affected with this sale if it does actually happen?
I hope that question is for me.
Yes, it's for you.
This debate,
you are a shareholder.
I'm a shareholder. I thought you are also all shareholders. Everybody bought something from Safaricom.
I didn't buy.
Oh, that's very unusual. I think the big issue here we are having is privatization. And I'm a firm believer in privatization, because private sector firms always do better than public sector. They are more efficient. They provide value for money. But the big question in the last 20 years in this country has been, how do we do it? And that's why when you try to sell part of Safaricom, everybody is up in arms. And the reason why people are up in arms is because of a very simple fact. we have not had a very good relationship between the government and its citizens. It's a question of trust. So if you ask anybody what is the big issue here, they will tell you, yeah, Safaricom will be sold, but you're not sure where that money will go. So until we build trust, anything we try on privatization will always be shrouded in suspicion, and people asking who will buy the money, who will take the money, and so on. So let's build the trust. But the bigger question I'm asking, and I'm asking that from an economic point of view, is why we're not focusing on the loss-making parastatals. Why don't we start with them? Because at the end of the day, that is what is draining our coffers. The money my colleague is talking about, $467 billion, is almost enough to pay all the pending bills for the contractors and suppliers in Kenya. So maybe that's why I'm saying we need more information. Why Safaricom and why not so many loss-making companies or parastatals, which are draining the taxpayers' money?
Well,
perhaps I need to. Can I interject on that one?
You can go ahead.
Prof, because I'm not an expert, but because of I've been involved in some of these things in different capacities, particularly in Parliament.
That's why we invited you here.
So when you are selling a state enterprise, there's always the two issues. Should you sell it when it is a strong position, means a company's performance is good, its growth is good, or will you sell it when it is very poor condition? It has massive losses, and and so when do you sell it? This has always been an issue, and he knows that if you are selling something, even if you want to take your bull to the market, you'll take the one that is going to give you a good price. Nobody is going to buy something that is weak and that is poor. So the argument has always been in public service, people in government who want to take advantage of this privatization, they will run down a state institution. Then when it's flat down on its back, it's poor, that's when they'll take it to the market, and then the market price will be very low, they'll buy it. So when I remember, I was also involved in the IPO for Mumia Sugar. That time it was very strong. But when we were trying to privatize Chemel later, which the government dragged its feet for many years, the other argument was, it's now not doing very well. Let us try and get it in a better condition. Otherwise, if you sell it in its current condition, when its performance is poor, is loss-making, then the price you're going to get is going to be very low, whether it's through a strategic investor or whether you send it through IPO. These things, you cannot, IPO obviously, you cannot send anything to list on Nairobi Stock Exchange when its performance is very poor. Definitely the prospectors and all people will look at that and say, nobody will want to invest in this, the price will be. So I think the decision, if the government wants money, my view is always you take your fattest bull to the market because you need money.
So I think he has a very interesting argument, which is convincing to me. And I think your last statement was the most important one. The government wants money. And you can easily get that money from profitable companies and the ones that are struggling.
Correct.
But I think we also need to ask, what should we do with the ones that are struggling? Should we turn them around? And how long are we
They
going
have
to
a
wait?
plan for 42 of them to be merged. They have a plan to restructure about 6 of them. I think they announced all those things. And so many, there's dissolution, there's restructuring, there's selling, and so I think, for example, KICC, let me just, for me, there are people who have said, how can the government sell KICC? This is an iconic building, it's our, to me, what has the government got to do with running buildings? We are located, each year we are given not less than 500 million. I think the amount has increased to more than 3 billion, I think. Allocation from Treasury to run that building. It doesn't make sense. What is owning a building? That can be, all over the world, people hold conferences in buildings that are owned by private people. So it's not a big deal. So I think when we look at that 267 state corporations, there are companies that are selling. We are selling, government is selling chicken, government is making water, government is selling taxis. The other day I got into Kanatko. You know how many years Kanatko has been, from the time Parliament resolved that Kanatko should be shut down as a taxi company. Go to Jomo Kenyatta, they're still there with GK number plates. And you get in and you say, I want to pay The driver will just give you his personal number to pay in.
I just want us to listen to
to
some of the sentiments that came very strongly from the Kiharu Member of Parliament, Ndindi Nyoro, who has been very vocal against this particular proposal. And I just want us to listen in on what he has to say. Of course, we'll also listen in on what the CS Mbadi also has to say about this particular issue. If my producer can just play that clip for us.
Ya kuuza hisa zile serikali inamiliki katika kampuni ya Safaricom PLC. Na wanauza hisa moja kwa shilingi 34 shillings. Safaricom was trading at 45 shillings per share in 2021 before they invested in Ethiopia. Mimi nauliza kwa heshima, let us not rush the sale of 15% stake in Safaricom. Let us give people a chance to compete. Let us open a competition of bids so that we can have many companies bidding to buy that stake of Safaricom, so that Kenyans can get full value for the stake we have in Safaricom. And that is why I requested my brother, Honorable John Mbadi. Juzi alisema angetaka tujadiliane hii mambo hata kwa runinga. Na nikasema kwa niaba ya Wakenya, mimi nimejitoa, because I have evidence that the government is being shortchanged in the sale of Safaricom. And I'll fight for this matter until our country gets full value of the Safaricom shares.
The impact it will have is this, that where we are today, we don't have enough fiscal space to continue taking more debts. So this will help us in debt position by not aggravating debt position any further. To us, we feel we are getting more value in this kind of arrangements. We could not ask for better deal than this, in my view, because you are getting a premium.
Gentlemen, as you've had those comments, there are, of course, conflicting thoughts into the sale. We've had there Kiharu Member of Parliament saying that the government is being shortchanged with this particular sale. And on the other hand, we've had CS John Mbadi saying this particular sale would help the government to steer a bit away from debt-related issues. I just want to begin with you, Prof. Do you think really, and just touching on what the MP, Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro has to say, that the government is being shortchanged, that perhaps this particular process should go through a competitive bidding as opposed to selling directly to a company. What are your thoughts on this?
Interesting, both gentlemen are right. Because what Ndindi Nyoro is saying, and I think I've been saying it, is if you want to get value for those shares, auction them. Because if you auction them and set a reserve price, you'll be able to get value for your money. But the question is, will you be able to do that when the government needs money? Because CS Mbadi is very right, we want money. Didi is not the finance minister, he is looking at the open market. But the government needs money, Didi is looking at the general, the long term. So both of them are right that we can get value by waiting. But what about if we wait and things don't go as positive as expected? Because in my argument, a bird at heart is what is ever in the bush. So both of them are correct. They are right in their own way. But the question is, which of these two gentlemen serves the best interest of the Kenyans? Is it Mbadi who wants money now? Or is it Nyoro who thinks that we can get value, better value in future? And that's why I'm keeping on saying, let's get all the information so that as Kenyans, as academics, as shareholders, we can make a decision. But when we bring all politics into this, the economic facts and the realities are hidden. Because he is saying that the share price has gone down because of investing in Ethiopia. But will not that make Safaricom more valuable in the future? Don't we spend money so that we can get more? Is that not an investment? So I think he's right by saying that it might not be the best value now, but I think it can be a better value in future. But are we going to wait until that future so that we can reap that? So I think both of them are right because each of them has their interests. Mbadi want money, Nyoro want value for the Kenyan citizens. The question is how to reconcile them, and maybe my partner can do that for us.
Bilo, what are your thoughts on what
I can't agree with Professor that both of them are right. Certainly, Indeed, in your remarks are pure populist remarks and misleading, utterly misleading. You cannot expect someone who was the chairman of Budget Committee in the National Assembly to really go in front of the public and tell them that, you know, this thing, once upon a time, it was at 70. Today is at this price, 34. We are losing. Look, anything that is, any company that is listed on any market, anywhere in the world, the price depends on the market sentiments. And the market sentiments can be driven by many things. For example, even 2021, he says it has reached 70. There must have been a reason. Maybe people expected.
He said 45.
45, yeah. People expected that if you invest in Ethiopia, we'll make more money.
That's true.
So that creates a sentiment and people buying. And then they realize, well, the investment in Ethiopia, apparently, there are no profits coming in for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So market sentiments, that's why the prices keep on. You saw what happened in America. I'll give you a very simple example with Elon Musk. You remember when he had a problem with Trump?
Yes.
And you saw what happened to his company's shares.
It went down.
Hundreds of billions. It's just, so market sentiments are driven by many factors, really. So you cannot say once upon a time it was at this price. It was selling at 8 for many years during Kibaki's early years. After we did the IPO at 5.
Yes.
For many years, Safaricom gone down to 4, 5 shillings, 6 shillings, 7 shillings, 8 shillings. So you cannot really say it had reached this peak at one time, so tomorrow it is going, why should you sell it today? No, you look at the price is what is in the market today. That's one. Two.
And I think perhaps even before you go ahead, his argument is maybe the current market price does not reflect the worth of the shares that can actually benefit the country.
On what grounds do you say that? Market price is determined by the market. That's why it's called the market. Markets are not always perfect, but when it comes to pricing, it's the one that is always determined because it's what an investor is willing to pay. He wants to buy extra shares of Safaricom. He'll go to the stockbroker tomorrow and tell them, I want to buy extra 1,000 shares. He'll ask. The broker will tell him, it's available at 25. He'll say, that's too high. I don't want to buy today. I'll buy later when it goes down to 20. So it's what the investor is willing to buy it. It's not what you think, is the way the MP is saying. No, it's what is available in the market. This is why it's called, that's why we have stock exchanges, so that it allows you to get that liquidity to sell when you want. Otherwise, there's no reason for a stock exchange. If people were basing stock-listed companies on wishes, you know, that this should have been this. This is undervalued. It should be at 45. The Deputy President said 70. You can't. It's always based on what an investor is willing to pay for on that market. There's nothing else you can do about it. But I think for me, the issue of the body is, for me, the timing is important for the government. Here, the government says, no taxes, yes. No loans, yes. What do? We have to look for funds to try and provide infrastructure and other things. And so they said, okay, let's go into our assets. Pick 100 billion from here. Pick 200 billion from here. Let's get some money. So for the government, this is the most ideal way of, in fact, it's a very, for me, I find it's a brilliant move by the government to try and offload some of the shares in some of their prime companies and use that to set up the seed capital. The issue of accountability will be dealt with. I'm sure there are institutions, that's why we have institutions to deal with that. People will go to court. These are normal things which will happen. But the idea and the market price, I think this is, for me, I find this as a brilliant. And then there is a clip which has been shared. Prof, I don't know whether you saw in Indinyo when he was the chairman of the budget.
I haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, he told Uhuru live. I'm sure you people have seen it. He told Uhuru, why don't you sell a portion of Safaricom and raise 300 billion?
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Yeah, instead of taking a loan. The same in Indinyo now is like, it's a bad deal. And that time the prices were not also that good. That year when he was talking about it was not at the 45. It was even
so we're
lower.
saying that there is value for Kenyans if the sale does go
For I
through?
believe this is a good value for Kenyans. And I think the proposed use of it is also a good use. That's what I think.
And that's what I'm saying. Once you mix politics and economics, we shall be talking up to the end of the year. Let's separate facts from reality. For example, I know if you look at the price of Safaricom today, I think it reflects all the information we have about the market. unless they did not know something we don't, I think our market has been quite efficient, if I can be academic. So what is this extra information that we don't have that will upset the price of Safaricom, either raise it or lower it? I think the price of Safaricom reflects all the information we have. On the use of the money, I agree with you, that is very brilliant, but this is very interesting. If you tell Kenyans to pay more taxes, they don't want. You tell them to raise more debt, they don't want. But if the government says we want to get money from sale of Safaricom, they don't want. So I think reading Kenyans is a very difficult job, because whatever you do for them, you're always rise up against you.
Maybe it's a trust issue.
It's a trust issue, and the fact that we don't always provide all the information. So if they don't provide information, people speculate. And you can see the wave of speculation from politicians, from ordinary citizens, from online, about what the sale of Safaricom is all about. Provide information, and people will make better decisions.
Some key issues that Ndindi did mention in one of the moments where he's been speaking to the media, and one of the things he said is there is a possibility that those who represented the government in this deal, possibly some are not government employees, and some, as he claims, may probably not be contracted to negotiate with the government, and maybe there are things that they do with the buyer. And that brings us to the point where he has also been advocating for the point where he says that this particular sale of the shares should be done through a competitive bidding process rather than to a specific company.
Let me clarify, Prof, one thing. Maybe it's important for the viewers to know. When you are listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, there's only one way you can sell. Through the market, the way you can go and sell his shares, or, through this kind of arrangement. By the way, even this arrangement, I have not checked, but the government, there could be a provision of preemptive rights being given to Vodacom that they exercise. Maybe. Because what happens in many of the state corporations that have been sold in the early years of Moi, commercial ones, CMC, Kenya, many of them, they did that through the preemptive rights, because there are provisions in the articles and memorandum of association of the company that the preferential rights should be given to company, one of some of the existing shareholders, or the existing institutional or major shareholders. That could be the reason. But the issue is you cannot talk of an auction on a company that is listed on the stock exchange. I don't think that is possible. What you can do is, yes, you can invite a certain group of private placement or some sort of whatever, but it must be based on what are the provisions that are there in the articles and association of the company. But lastly, I want to say, Mzee, there's something we always hear about insider trading or something.
Yeah.
Indeed, Nyoro, you're the ones who reported it, offloaded 3 million shares in the last few months. If it was not doing well, and the price is supposed to go to the way he's arguing now, the price is supposed to go, it can be better. Why did he sell 3 million shares in the last few months? And he got about 30, 40 million shillings. Because he knows that is the market price. And the market, and in fact, they said, the CS in party said, the 6 months average, the last 6 months average is the highest it has been in the last couple of years. It went to 28 when they averaged it. And he sold it. It was in Business Times, reported by the Business Insider, Business Africa. So I think, I want to conclude by saying, Prof, when you listen to the CS when he was in the media houses, what he said is that, look, the money that is involved is huge, because you're talking of 6 million shares, 240 billion. And they're looking at Vodacom is one of the largest investor. They have the 49%. So they looked at, a lot of issues in terms of them also agreeing to some of the conditions. If you sold this thing to just everyone, some of those, I think the conditions that they listed, some of them are very interesting, where they, they wanted to make this thing still, and they agreed to. And those conditions can be, normally what happens is they become an addendum to the articles of memorandum, so that it becomes binding on the company. So I think in government, let me tell you, the question of accountability and transparency will always have question marks. Nobody knows what happens behind the scenes. When Safaricom was first privatized, you remember the story of Mobitalea and many others? Yes. Some things just happened even in London. They can do also for you if you tell them, whatever else you have done, just some 5% of the shares should end up here. They will do for you. So some things you cannot roll out in government. What happens when you are privatizing? It happens in particularly in African countries, this has happened always. When you're privatizing, these things happen. But, you know, you cannot, as the African saying is, one does not refuse to eat for fear of choking.
You choke and then you do the consequences. but I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is, you know, this discussion is loop-sided. I want to hear the buyers and the sellers. What is their view? What is Vodacom saying? What is Safaricom saying? What are the regulators saying? Because if we got this information, I'm sure this debate would be more interesting. Because now we are being told the government is selling shares to Vodacom. But Vodacom, I don't think I've heard Vodacom say something as prospective buyers. So give us information. We see how...
Yeah, the first issue, I think Safaricom and Vodacom both issued statements.
They issued statements. But the question is, what about the minority shareholders like me? We have not...
They'll come to you. Safaricom will come to you definitely.
Why would they not come to me?
Special general EGM must be there to approve the sale of this kind of...
So I'm looking forward to that. But let's have as much information as we can.
I think one of the key things to ask, and I think the former Deputy President has been asking that question and really mentioning it, being vocal about it, the selling of state assets or state institutions, it's a great concern, of course, the opposition has been raising. What impact do you think this tends to have on the country moving forward? Should we expect a negative impact as we continue to see the selling of state institutions in this country below?
Well, when you have a government in power and opposition, these arguments will be there. I mean, even during the time of Moi, when they started liberalization of state corporations, those arguments have always been there. How, you know, they will be there. I think Kibaki's time is when there was very little in terms of companies that have been privatized. I think one of them was, I remember, Kengen. They sold some shares. Mumias, both of them I was involved in the IPO as a share registrar. But generally, the concern about accountability, when you are outside there, you will always have that suspicion that the government guys are making some deals in this. You can't stop, you can't get away from that one. It's a suspicion that will be there. It doesn't matter which government is power. When Uhuru was in power in the last few months of his office, the story of him, of the government, the Treasury announced that they want to concession the port of Mombasa to DP World. You remember?
Yeah.
Of Dubai. And Kenyans raised a lot of issues. They said, no, we can't. How? Where? When? Who backtracked? So, I mean, these questions have always been there. There are so many examples of that. And there are others where they have happened and they failed. For example, when Kenya Railways was concessioned out to Citadel, this Egyptian company, whatever, for a consortium or whatever, it was an awful deal. Nothing came out of it. They didn't put a single shilling. The same thing when Kenya Petroleum Refineries Limited was concessioned again to this Indian company, SR of India. Nothing. They didn't put a single. They got it for literally for free, and the plan was they would put in $400 million. They didn't put a cent.
And Orange.
The same thing with Ramis.
Orange
Telecom. So it's all the stories. Many of institutions that have been, because of some deals that the government officers make, which are noticed. But this is one of the most straightforward one because it's something quoted, listed on the stock exchange. The prices are there. If these guys were announcing today, they were selling Safaricom at lower than that 28 market price, the average for the, the average for the 6 months. Today, I think today's price, then everyone would be suspicious. Why are you selling at less than 28 and the market price is 28? Here now the government, I mean, it's smart. I don't know what the opposition can argue really. They're telling you we are getting 34. I mean, so where is the argument? So if whatever else they got outside there, on this one you can't beat them. They could be something. I'm not saying they cannot be anything. They could be getting an extra shilling for every share. For all I care, they could be getting some 10 shillings. But we don't know. But what is important is that the 34 they are getting itself is a good deal.
As we come to a close, I'd just like to get your final remarks. It's clear that in your views, Bilo and XN, that this is good value for the country. But I think many questions still remain unanswered on issues of competitive bidding, perhaps. I think you did mention something on that. But the opposition, of course, feeling the whole deal feels a bit opaque. And I think in the coming days, we'll be able to see exactly what XN was mentioning, maybe the shareholders and the sellers just giving us more information on the transparency of the deal. But before we come to a close of tonight's discussion, I just want to get your final comments about tonight's topic. I'll begin with you, XN.
I think one thing that we cannot disentangle this debate from is 2027. So as 2027 approaches, you hear a lot of things that you never think or you never thought about. But I think my bigger question as we conclude is, we are talking about existing companies. If we are going to become a developed country by the year 2055, and that years from now, we should be focusing on new companies. How many companies have we nurtured from SMEs into IPO? I think that's what we should be discussing more, not the existing companies, because some of those companies are mature and they cannot grow even bigger than they are. So let's now shift from the existing companies to new companies. So how many companies have we nurtured in the last 10, 20 years to be able to be floated in the stock exchange? What about, we are talking about the companies that are listed like Safaricom. What about the smaller businesses in Gekomba, in other smaller towns that are struggling to grow? So I think the focus too much on the listed companies is deviating us from the focus on other smaller companies that are equally important.
All right, let's hear from you, Bilo.
You see, the capital markets, let me tell you, is one of the most important institutions in an economy. If this government would take advantage of the capacity that the capital market has, we would not even be looking for loans. This is why many of us, even when they came up with this housing levy, we said, why would the government want to do that? Give incentives to private sector guys. The money is there in the capital markets. They'll raise it. You can walk there and collect 100 billion tomorrow if you want to, raise bonds and raise a lot of money. So the whole essence of privatization was welcomed by many of the players in the financial sector, because that capital market has been dead for several years, because government has not been. There are no companies that are coming in. Many of our businesses are family-owned. They don't come to the, to the stock markets. Government has over 300-400 companies. They are not coming to the market. So when the government said we are going to bring 25 companies to Nairobi Stock Exchange, everyone is excited. Like the KPC one will be a very good test, because it's going to be through an IPO, Kenya Pipeline. They want to offload 65% of the company. It gives an opportunity now to Prof and his friends to buy shares directly now in Kenya.
But I'm looking for our Googles and our Toyotas that they start in the garage,
so
they grow until they go to the market.
When you develop your market, your stock market, then other international companies will come and list here. But you see, when our market is dormant and there are the only big companies we have are these government ones, then you find other companies are not coming to invest. But I think, for me, the entry of the fact that Vodafone, an international company, is buying additional 15, and that means they'll own majority shares, itself is it sends very good sentiments to other bigger companies, the Googles and others who want to come and foreign companies to come and list here.
No, I want us
to but a lot of factors determine other companies. From what I know, tax is one of the issues.
That's true.
Your ability to take away, to get your money back, the stability of the forex. So many factors come into play, really, when you want to come and list here, which I think needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
I want to start our own companies and grow them into the stock exchange.
Yes.
Thank you for the great discussion we've had tonight. Quite a lot of insight into this particular topic. I know it's been a debate, especially in the business arena, where there's been a lot of speculation, like we've mentioned today. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for shedding light. Bilo Carroll, political analyst, political economist, thank you so much for making time. And Professor XN Iraki, who is also an economist. Tonight's discussion, of course, is shedding light into the government's plan to sell 15% of Safaricom shares to South Africa-based Vodacom, with the opposition threatening to challenge, of course, the decision in court. That has been our discussion today. And before I leave you, I just want to remind you again to get a copy for yourself of the Standard tomorrow. And the front page, again, just there, looking at the front page, we have a story with the headline reading, "The ID Scandal. The arrest of 26 suspects in a fast-growing citizenship for sale racket has added fresh urgency to concerns that President Ruto's decision to scrap security vetting for ID applicants in northern Kenya Kenya and other border counties has opened dangerous loophole. Critics who warned the decree would be exploited now feel vindicated as racketeers, rogue clerks and middlemen collude to dish out Kenya's nationality at a fee. Investigators say Northeastern has emerged as one of the biggest beneficiaries of the fraud, with criminal networks exploiting the relaxed rules rather to slip foreigners through the system and undermine national security. This story on page 4 and 5 in tomorrow's Standard newspaper. Just make sure you get yourself a copy. And thank you so much for staying with us until this very moment. My name is Leangare. Just to remind you, my sign language interpreter today has been Philip Omondi. Thank you again for staying tuned, and keep it locked here on KTN and enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good night.